Good morning, students. So far we have completed our first chapter, that is the era of the Cold War, and I want all of you to write the summary of the Cold War in your exercise copy. Whatever you have understood, please write it down, and please remember the names also, treaties, whatever treaties they have signed, military treaty or the arms treaty, and who were in favor of either of the party, USSR or the USA, NAM, India's role, and who are the founder members of the NAM, why NAM did not want it to participate in any of the rivalries between the two superpowers, everything. Please write it down in your exercise copy. Now today we'll start our second chapter, that is the end of the bipolarity. Today I will just give you the introduction of the second chapter, the end of bipolarity. Bipolarity means the rule of two powers. At that time there were two superpowers, that is USSR and the USA. Now this chapter, the end of the bipolarity, is actually a result of Cold War also. We can say that, because one of the party or one of the superpower collapsed during that time, and which was that power, who won the Cold War between whatever is going on between the two superpower, we'll discuss in this chapter. How the Cold War ended, we'll discuss in this chapter. So Cold War began to end not by the military means, but as a result of the mass action or the ordinary men and the women. Both the superpower, we have already discussed in Cold War era that both the superpowers have military, they are full of military power, they have strong military power, both have armed weapons, both have nuclear weapons. But the Cold War ended not by the military power or the arms or the ammunities or nuclear weapon, but the Cold War ended by the common people, the ordinary people, the mass of that particular country. So this Cold War, I think I have discussed this point with you all, that the Cold War between the two superpowers was actually also a war of capitalism and socialism. USA was a capitalist country and USSR was a socialist country. In capitalism or the capitalist country, private property or the private ownership gives, they will have a priority. And in socialist country, the state controlled the wealth of the country or the wealth of the society, and the state equally distribute those wealth between the citizen of the country. That is called socialism. So USSR was a socialist country. In USSR, everything has been controlled by the state only, and in USA was a capitalist country where USA was a capitalist country where there was a private ownership, or the private property has been given much importance in USA. Now what happened and which of the superpower has been ended during that time, we'll discuss in this chapter. First of all, let us discuss what is USSR. What do you understand by USSR? The Soviet Union. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR, came into being after the Socialist Revolution in Russia in 1917. So this USSR has been formed in 1917 when there was a revolution in Russia. There was an abolition of institution of private property in Russia. Everyone wanted to follow socialism in their country. So this USSR has been formed. The economy was planned and controlled by the state only, because the people of the Eastern Europe or the Russia, they wanted to have a socialism in their country, and USSR was controlled by the Communist Party at that time. The Communist Party controlled everything in their state, the wealth, property, people, employment, everything has been controlled by the Communist Party. That is why USSR has a socialist system. After the Second World War, the East European countries that the Soviet army had liberated from the fascist force came under the control of the USSR. So, in the Second World War, whatever countries were there in East Europe, they have been saved by the Soviet Union or the USSR, and they supported USSR from that period onwards. So I have already told you that USSR was formed by different countries. There are almost 15 countries, and Russia was one of the most important country, because Russia was the head of all those 15 countries. So USSR has been formed by 15 other countries, and all the 15 other countries headed by Russia, they wanted to have socialism in their country, a socialist structure, a socialist government in their country, in which everything will be controlled by the state only. So the East European countries who were part of this USSR, they have been saved by USSR during the Second World War, and they came under Soviet Union. This is how the USSR has been formed, and which was headed by Russia. So after the Second World War, during that time, when there was only two superpowers, we have discussed that there were two superpowers, that is USA and the USSR. We already know that USA was very powerful. Everything has been developed in USA. But USSR also has everything. USSR was also a very developed country, but a little bit less compared to the USA. USSR has everything, but they cannot compare themselves with USA, because USA was much more developed than the USSR, and the second developed country was USSR at that time. USSR had everything, every energy resources. They have like oil, iron, steel, machinery product, and a transport sector that connect its remotest area with efficiency. Every resource was there. Everything has been manufactured in USSR only, within their country only. They produced domestic consumer. They are the domestic consumer. Everything from a pin to a car has been manufactured in their countries only. But though the quality whatever they were manufacturing in Soviet Russia, that quality did not match with the USA, because USA, we already know that USA was very developed at that time, and the standard of living of all the citizens at that time was common. Everyone was equal to the other. There was no unemployment problem in USSR. State has been controlling everything very efficiently, and state ownership was the dominant form of ownership, because everything has been controlled by the state. So this is called the socialist form, and this is how USSR was formed. After the Second World War, they have everything. They were developed like USA was much more developed, but the second developed country was USSR. There was no unemployment problem. Every resources was there. Communication were there. Domestic consumer were there. They were manufacturing everything. But the quality, yes, the quality cannot be compared to the USSR. But everything was there during that time. The main problem at that time was that everything has been controlled by USSR. People were following whatever the government give instruction, or whatever government says. People were following everything, but the sentiment of the people that can be heard by the state, and state didn't have that idea during that time. So when we start this chapter, the introduction chapter, I told you that the Cold War has been ended by the mass revolution and not by the military forces. So people were not happy with the socialists after the time being, after many years under the control of the state. People were not happy. They did not have the right to say whatever they feel in front of the government. They cannot, they do not have the freedom of speech. At that time, most of the institutions of the Soviet needed reform at that time, because people wanted to speak whatever they feel, but there was no freedom of speech in USA, in USSR, Soviet Russia, because everything has been controlled by the state only. This is the reason that we can say the end of the Cold War, because people themselves have revolted within the country only. So if you are fighting with other power and your own people are not supporting you at that time, that what will happen? Obviously you will fail. So similar is the case with USA and the USSR. USSR's people revolted. They did not have freedom of speech, so they wanted freedom from Russia. We can say that Russia was dominating the whole USSR, because Russia was the head, and he was controlling the whole economy. He was controlling the state, he was controlling people, he was controlling employment, resources. Everything was controlled by Russia. So we can see that Russia was dominating the whole USSR. That is the reason people wanted freedom from the USSR. So if your own people wanted freedom from you, if your own people wanted to get away from you, then you will obviously fail. How can you fight with other superpower when your own people is not supporting you? So the case is that USSR has been disintegrated. All the 15 other countries who has been part of USSR, they wanted independence from Russia. They wanted to have their own government. The people of that particular country wanted to have their own government, their own rules, their own regulations. So USSR has been disintegrated. Every other country wanted freedom. There was revolution by the mass, by the common people. So USSR has disintegrated. And if USSR has disintegrated, because USSR was formed by 15 other countries, and if those 15 countries were demanding independence from Russia, they wanted to have freedom from Russia, then there will be independent country, 15 independent country. So this weakened Russia, this weakened Soviet Russia. This is how the Cold War ended, because now USSR or Russia do not have that much of power that they can compete with USA. So this is the result of USSR, and this is the end of the bipolarity. Also, there were two superpowers who were controlling the whole world, and one superpower has been disintegrated. One superpower has been collapsed. So there was only one superpower, that is USA, and still now we have only one superpower, that is USA. This is how the Cold War ended, and this is how the bipolarity also ended. So I want all of you, please go through the chapter carefully, and if you have any questions, because no one is asking me any questions, I want all of you to please ask questions. If you do not understand, if you have any problem, if you are facing any problem, please you can write in WhatsApp and do comment, and we will continue this chapter in our next class. we'll start disintegration, how the disintegration has started and who were the people behind that disintegration, what was the main cause of the disintegration, why the reform has been failed. Everything will be discussed in our next class. Till then, take care, stay safe and do read the chapters.